Imagine this. It's November 22nd, 1963. President John F. Kennedy's motorcade is rolling through Dealey Plaza in Dallas. Suddenly, shots ring out. But this time, Kennedy slumps forward, badly injured, but alive. Doctors rush him to Parkland Memorial Hospital. After hours of surgery, the president survives. What would America and the world look like if Kennedy had lived? In this video, we'll dive into one of the most fascinating alternate histories of the 20th century. We'll explore how his survival could have changed the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, the Cold War, and even American culture itself. This is Renaissance Reframed. And today we ask, what if JFK survived the assassination? Before we imagine the alternate timeline, let's set the scene. In 1963, the United States was at a crossroads. The Cold War dominated global politics. The Soviet Union had just tested Kennedy's resolve during the Cuban Missile Crisis a year earlier. At home, the civil rights movement was gaining unstoppable momentum, but racial tensions ran high. Kennedy's presidency was often described as Camelot, youthful, glamorous, full of hope, yet beneath the charm. His administration faced enormous challenges. His re-election campaign for 1964 was already taking shape. But in reality, his story was cut short. In our alternate world, he survives, and that changes everything. If Kennedy had survived, the immediate aftermath would be dramatic. The nation would rally around him, not in mourning, but in relief. His approval ratings, which already hovered around 60%, would likely soar. Americans would see him, not just as a leader, but as a man who stared death in the face and endured. But imagine the visuals. Kennedy returning to public life with visible scars from the attempt. His charisma would be matched with a sense of resilience. It could have transformed him from a youthful figurehead into a symbol of survival and determination. Politically, his re-election in 1964 would almost be guaranteed. Lyndon B. Johnson, who took over in our timeline, might have remained a loyal vice president, or perhaps faded into history as a political footnote. One of the biggest what-ifs revolves around Vietnam. Kennedy had begun sending United States advisors to South Vietnam, but he was skeptical about full-scale involvement. In private conversations, he hinted that he didn't want to drag America into a long, unwinnable war. Had he lived, it's possible Kennedy would have begun a withdrawal of troops after securing re-election. This could have spared the United States the bloodshed, division, and chaos of the Vietnam War. Think about the ripple effects. No massive anti-war protests. No draft, tearing apart young America. No Kent State shootings. The counterculture movement would still emerge. But without Vietnam as its rallying cry, it might have been less explosive, less polarizing. Kennedy supported civil rights, but cautiously, his assassination gave Lyndon B. Johnson the political capital and determination to push through the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. If JFK lived, would these landmark laws still pass? Probably, but maybe more slowly. Kennedy preferred gradual reform, careful negotiation, and political compromise. He lacked Johnson's bulldog-like ability to twist arms in Congress. So perhaps civil rights progress would have been delayed by years. But Kennedy's symbolic leadership, a young president championing equality, might have softened resistance and reduced the level of backlash seen later in the decade. The image of a scarred president having survived an attempt on his life, standing beside Martin Luther King Jr., that would have been a powerful moment in American history. The Cold War was a backdrop of Kennedy's entire presidency. By 1963, the Cuban Missile Crisis had shown both the dangers and the opportunities of nuclear standoff. Kennedy was reportedly considering back-channel talks with Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev. If he lived détente, the easing of tensions might have arrived earlier than it did under Nixon. What about the space race? Kennedy famously declared America would land a man on the moon before the decade was out. Surviving the assassination would have tied his legacy even more tightly to that mission. Imagine July 1969. Neil Armstrong steps onto the lunar surface. And instead of Nixon on the phone, it's John F. Kennedy himself speaking to the astronauts, fulfilling his own promise. That single moment might have defined the century. Culturally, Kennedy's assassination is often seen as the end of post-war American innocence, the moment the dream of the early 1960s shattered. If he lived, that wound never comes. America still faces struggles, but the sense of betrayal, loss, and cynicism tied to his death doesn't scar the nation. the 1960s might still explode with change. Hippies, rock and roll, women's liberation, but perhaps with less bitterness, less distrust in government. Watergate might still occur, but in a different cultural context. Maybe it wouldn't fuel the same level of disillusionment. And perhaps the myth of Camelot wouldn't be a myth at all. It would be a reality that lasted into a second Kennedy term. So, what does a world with a living JFK look like by the late 1960s? America possibly avoids a Vietnam quagmire. Civil rights progresses, though perhaps more cautiously. The Cold War eases sooner. The space race becomes Kennedy's crowning achievement. American culture keeps its optimism longer. But survival might also bring challenges. Kennedy had health problems, Addison's disease, chronic back pain. That could have worsened. His reputation for infidelity might have exploded into scandal as journalism became more aggressive. Still, even with flaws exposed, a two-term Kennedy presidency would have left a very different America behind. The ripples extend beyond the U.S. Without Vietnam, global perception of America is stronger. Perhaps U.S. prestige in Asia and Europe remains untarnished. The counterculture's influence worldwide, from Paris to Prague, might be less intense. The Soviet Union, facing a charismatic and enduring Kennedy, might soften its stance earlier. The arms race might have slowed. Who knows? Perhaps the Cold War itself ends years earlier. In short, Kennedy's survival could have rewritten not just American history, but world history. History is shaped by moments. The gunshots in Dallas didn't just end one man's life. They redirected the course of a nation. But imagining a world where Kennedy survived allows us to see how fragile history truly is. One twist of fate, one missed bullet, and the 20th century might have looked entirely different. So, what do you think? Would JFK's survival have saved America from Vietnam? Changed civil rights? Altered the Cold War? Let us know in the comments, because history, after all, is not just about what happened, but also about what could have been.